Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 268 based on novel. So let's start. Looking at the blood flame bird in front of him, Xiao Yan couldn't help thinking of the scene when he tyrannized the latter. At this time, he couldn't help sighing. If he had started lightly, the giant bird turned into a human and became a strong young man with bare arms. He had thick eyebrows and big eyes, and his face was full of flesh. Just looking at him, he had a ruthless strength. What's different from when Xiao Yang first saw him is that now this guy's cultivation has reached the later stage of returning to the source, even a line higher than his cultivation. It's too exaggerated. Zhu Kan comes to the two and looks at Xiao Yang for a while. Then he looks at Zhu Hao with a smile on his face, grins and respectfully says, "Hey, Dad." Hearing this title, Xiao Yang had a dull look and was even dull in an instant. How could he think that Zhu Kan in front of him would be the son of the strong man, and he beat Zhu Kan up? Now, is this a sheep into a tiger? Xiao Yang was speechless, but Zhu Hao looked at him again, glanced at Zhu Kan, and said in a slightly low voice, "That's the boy who beat you last time?" Hearing the speech, Zhu Kan nodded heavily and stared at Xiao Yang with a pair of eyes. The fierce color in his eyes was self-evident. It also made Xiao Yang feel more and more hairy, and the source chi in his body could not help running. If Zhu Hao really wanted to do something about him, even if he failed to repair himself, he could not wait to die. "Hey, human boy, are you afraid that I will avenge you on behalf of my son?" Aware of the abnormal source of qi in Xiao Yang's body, Zhu Hao smiled disdainfully and said, "Then you look down on my blood flame bird family. He can't beat you, not Lao Tzu. If he eats a dent in your hand, he must fight back by himself. This is the rule of my blood flame bird family. As long as he is not disabled or dead, I don't care what you like. So if you want to leave here today, either fight with Zhu Kan and win, you love to go where to go. If you lose, get out of the fire maple forest. The guy outside seems to be waiting for you," Zhu Hao said in a low voice. The casual strength in his words made Xiao Yang cry and laugh. This kind of free-raising posture was too casual. At least it was his own son. Was this father still able to say such words? It was really crazy. No wonder they were so grumpy. However, it's better than the domineering father himself. What surprised Xiao Yang is how Zhu Kan's cultivation was promoted from the later stage of source territory to the later stage of return territory in just a few months. Such an adverse growth rate is a little scary. "Hey, Xiao Yang, you combined with the wild monkey at the beginning, but you did me a lot of harm. If you hadn't coerced me, I wouldn't have been humiliated, but fortunately, I came back and stayed in that remote place." Just when Zhu Kan mentioned the Liu family, Zhu Hao frowned. The latter immediately counseled, swallowed his words, looked at his father with fear, and then continued. "However, this time is different from the past. With my current cultivation, I will be able to step under your feet." In the end, Zhu can't help smiling confidently. After the Hui nationality, according to the family rules, he completed the blood awakening, and his cultivation soared to a level. I believe he will be able to enter the realm of Yuan Wang in a few years. Then, thinking about the strong feeling in the future, Zhu Kan can't help looking forward to it, but now, bang! Without any fancy, just like Zhu Hao's previous shot, Xiao Yang quickly came forward. When Zhu Kan was distracted and intoxicated, he blew it away with a simple punch. The elder just said that as long as you win, you can leave on your own. "Excuse me, is it okay now?" With a polite smile, Xiao Yang's eyes returned to Zhu Hao again and asked respectfully. However, Xiao Yang's words made the latter speechless. According to the rules of his blood flame bird family, Xiao Yang's fist is simply fierce, which can be said to be very beautiful. Zhu Kan naturally lost, and Xiao Yang can leave on his own. However, in principle, Xiao Yang's practice is also a sneak attack, not a righteous way. The victory method of opportunism doesn't seem to count. However, what his blood flame bird family stresses is simply overbearing. Winning is winning, and in the real battle, he never talks about whether the means are heretical or not. It seems that Xiao Yang did win. Is it too fast? Zhu Hao tilted his lips and whispered to himself. When he looked up, he saw that Xiao Yang was about to leave. Just when he wanted to stop, Zhu Kan, who was blown out by Xiao Yang's fist, rushed up again and rushed straight at Xiao Yang with the power of irritability. Still coming. With a frown on his brow, Xiao Yang's heart moved, and his strength was determined to show immediately. He turned and punched the guy out again. Then he looked at Zhu Hao, as if he was waiting for his statement. Cough, since the boy is still strong to fight again, then. I can't stop it. This is the rule. The rule. Zhu Hao coughed twice. He didn't expect Xiao Yang to be so domineering. With his cultivation in the middle of returning to the source territory, he was able to blow Zhu Kan away with such a fist. It was terrible. Moreover, the boy was ashamed. He was beaten out by Xiao Yang again before he completely recovered from the beginning to the end. This waste. Glancing away, Zhu Hao scolded angrily. Then he saw that Zhu Kan was blown away by Xiao Yang again. The whole person immediately turned around in embarrassment. He only listened to the screams coming from behind. Rao was sorry for Zhu Kan because of his temperament. For a long time, when Zhu Kan gets up again, Xiao Yang has no strength. However, this guy seems to have endless energy. Once he hits, this guy will stand up again. This perseverance is really amazing. Helpless, Xiao Yang had to take a step and quickly leave here. Zhu Hao naturally discovered Xiao Yang's departure at the first time, but until the latter disappeared out of sight, he turned around, looked up at the sky just south, leaned slightly, then picked up Zhu Kan and flew away to some place in the mountain forest. At the same time, in the deepest part of the fire maple forest, on the periphery of a valley, a noble woman in a blue dress is looking at the release in the north. She looks cold on a beautiful cheek, and this woman is the one who had a few sides with Xiao Yang and his party. Li Bingrui. The vast and boundless fire maple forest is thousands of miles deep. At Xiao Yang's speed, it goes straight to the south. Unexpectedly, it has gone straight for 2 days. Until now, there is an endless red sea of fire behind him. At this moment, in front of Xiao Yang, there is a green mountain soaring up. At the foot of the green hill, in a backlight area in the east, a graceful shadow is sitting quietly on the cliff. When Xiao Yang came here, the woman also opened her eyes, and their eyes immediately touched each other. It's you. Li Bingrui. Seeing that the woman should appear here, Xiao Yang could not help frowning and looked surprised. Unexpectedly, he saw her again. Indeed, as Li Bingrui said, they met again. I said we would meet again. I've been waiting for you here for more than 2 months. You did come, but it's too late than I expected. Li Bingrui's face was expressionless and cold, but he seemed to have expected Xiao Yang's arrival. Did you know I would come? With a frown, he only made a few friends with the woman. Why did she know she would come here? For the sake of the fire of Honglian industry, you will come here. Red Lotus industry fire is here. As soon as he said this, Xiao Yang's face was stunned at first, and then turned into endless ecstasy. Since that's the case, his line of fire maple forest finally didn't come in vain. Looking up at the green mountain in front of him, Xiao Yang's inner blood was instantly ignited and found the fire of Honglian industry, which indicates that his cultivation can be further improved. With this in mind, Xiao Yang couldn't help but speed up his steps and wanted to go to the valley behind Li Bingrui. Stop. However, the next second, while the cold words came out, a cold and piercing long sword also suddenly passed in front of Xiao Yang. The sharp sword chi made Xiao Yang's forward steps stop instantly, and his body shape unconsciously stepped back 2 steps. Looking up, Li Bingrui's body shape already appeared in front of him. The edge of the cold long sword turned and pointed directly at him. What does that mean? With a frown on his brow, Xiao Yang's heart is full of strange fire at the moment. How can he be in the mood to pay attention to this girl? Why do you think I'm waiting for you here? If you want to see my master, you must pass me first. As soon as the voice fell, Xiao Yang's face suddenly changed, and he was very surprised at this. Master Li Bingrui pointed out that Yi Honglian was undoubtedly the most impressive. However, Yi Honglian was a strange fire and had fierce attributes. How could he have a disciple practicing ice attributes? It's incredible. However, Hearing Li Bingrue's words, Xiao Yang understood that what Li Bingrue said to Xiao Yang was them. Now it seems that they should refer to Guyo and Haimo dust. Only Li Bingrue, who knows this well, will know the fact that they exist in Xiao Yang's body. I'm here to find Elder Yi Honglian. I don't want to have any dispute with you. After thinking for a moment, Xiao Yang shook his head slightly. After all, Li Bingrue is Yi Honglian's disciple. He naturally wants to be polite, and Luo Jin seems to be very impressed at the first sight of this woman. If he shoots at Li Bingrue, I'm afraid he won't be able to speak to Luo Jin at that time. If you want to see my master, unless you defeat me, I will try my best to stop you and kill you, which is also within the scope of stopping. However, Li Bingrue was not at all soft-hearted about Xiao Yang's words. When the words fell, the long sword in his hand suddenly stabbed Xiao Yang and pointed directly at the center of his eyebrows. Shua. However, what she hit with this sword was just a remnant of Xiao Yang. What? Seeing this scene, Li Bingrue was shocked. Both are in the source territory, but Xiao Yang's speed is much faster than her. In terms of this attack, she has never found out how Xiao Yang escaped. This is really a ghost. When Li Bingrue turned around, Xiao Yang's body had appeared outside the valley. Looking at the vertical and horizontal steps in front of him, Xiao Yang stepped on it slowly. Now that you are in someone else's territory, you must abide by these rules. You can walk up the 1,000-foot stone steps. Get down. Then the next moment, Li Bingrue's body flashed out again, and the long sword scratched hard to his face. Xiao Yang twisted his body and bent down. Unexpectedly, he hid the sword from him at an extremely strange angle. When he got up, an energy competition suddenly shot out from the long sword, facing Xiao Yang's crotch from bottom to top. This is to destroy children and grandchildren. Suddenly, Xiao Yang was shocked. However, Xiao Yang had to lean back. At the moment when his body stopped, he decided to show his strength immediately. A positive punch exploded the energy competition. At the same time, a breath of extreme cold also wrapped Xiao Yang's fist. A layer of thin ice quickly spread on his right arm, which was extremely cold. Xiao Yang's flesh felt a tingling. Bang! The heart read a move and the different fire lit up, which gradually melted the thin ice, but this scene also surprised Xiao Yang. It's just a thin layer of ice. Under his own strange fire, he also supported several breaths. In Xiao Yang's past experience, except for the extremely cold ice spirit, no other cold ice can support under his strange fire, and Li Bingrue's cold ice can. My cold ice source gas has long been able to resist the erosion of different fires under the master's training. In this world, no flame can suppress me, nor can you. Aware of Xiao Yang's surprise, Li Bingrue gave a cold voice, and then his charming body flashed again. The long sword turned sharply. In the blink of an eye, several channels of energy were shot out one after another, but even Xiao Yang could not escape. Helpless, he had to stop all of them with a different fire. When his body regressed, Xiao Yang fell down the steps leading to the deep valley. Get out of here. I can be when nothing has happened. If you don't come again, I won't trouble you. Li Bingrue stood on the steps and stared at Xiao Yang with cold eyes. His words were especially firm. In order not to leave Shifu or let Shifu disappear between heaven and earth, she will never allow Xiao Yang to step into this valley. Over the years, she has worked hard to cultivate an experience between the mainland, so that one day she can drive away those who come to look for Yi Honglian. She does not allow anyone to step in the pure land of fire maple forest. Sorry, I can understand the importance of your master to you, but please understand that finding her is my inevitable decision, and no one can stop it. Xiao Yang shook his head slightly. While the voice in his mouth fell, the giant elephant will also display it. Die. When Xiao Yang's golden body condensed, Li Bingrue's face also showed a dark color. Her delicate body moved and her long sword stabbed Xiao Yang hard. In the blink of an eye, it appeared in front of Xiao Yang. The unparalleled blade broke through the void and stabbed Xiao Yang directly. Dang! Just when the long sword was less than 1 meter away from Xiao Yang's body, Xiao Yang raised his right hand and only stretched out 2 fingers, so he blocked the long sword. No matter how hard Li Bingrue tried, it was difficult to make an inch. You are Yi Honglian's disciple. I don't want to fight with you, so please get out of the way. With a faint word, Xiao Yang's right hand trembled slightly, and a huge force immediately attacked Li Bingrui's white palm along the long sword. The long sword in his hand was immediately removed by Xiao Yang uncontrollably, and then gently dumped, and was inserted into the rock wall in the distance, while Xiao Yang stepped forward and strode across the steps. I forbid you to go up. Seeing that Xiao Yang still refused to stop, Li Bingrui's pretty face became more and more gloomy. Her delicate body moved and rushed directly at Xiao Yang. The source gas between her two jade hands turned over, and the surging power poured out, pounding wildly at Xiao Yang's body. In this regard, Xiao Yang did not dare to be careless. Li Bingrui's cold ice can be immune to the temperature of different fire to a certain extent. Once it is stained by it, it is very difficult. Therefore, in the face of Li Bingrui's fierce attack, Xiao Yang had to try to avoid it with the help of Qianjue step. Fortunately, after Qianjuebu's success in entering Lingyun territory, Xiao Yang's speed has entered a new level. Today's Xiao Yang is afraid that ordinary Source Wang's strong can fight, not to mention Li Bingrui's hundreds of moves in the later stage of returning to the Source territory. The latter has never even touched Xiao Yang's clothes, which really makes Li Bingrui angry. Asshole, as a man, can you only hide? Once again, Xiao Yang evades his attack. Li Bingrui has been gnashing her teeth with anger, but Xiao Yang still looks like a smile that needs beating. It seems that she is afraid that she is not angry enough. If I don't give you a hand, I'm already giving you a hand. Can I still stand here and call you? Damn it. Who needs your help? If you really have the ability, just fight with me. While talking, Xiao Yang easily avoided Li Bingrui's blow again. If you win, take me to your teacher. Xiao Yang smiled and looked at Li Bingrui's charming body passing in front of him. His dark eyes couldn't help showing a look of admiration for the moving picture in front of him. However, hearing this in Li Bingrui's ears, the latter scolded, and his anger was even worse on his beautiful cheek. You fart. You can't beat me, and you won't want to see my master, Pa. As soon as the curse fell in her mouth, Li Bingrui's pretty face immediately showed a look of shame and anger. One cheek even red to the root of her ears, and there was an unbelievable look in her beautiful eyes. Just now, Xiao Yang unexpectedly. If a beautiful woman says such words, she will be ugly. Xiao Yang smiled with a shameless appearance and felt the tenderness between her palms. She couldn't help rubbing her hands subconsciously. Just now, when Li Bingrui scolded, her body just passed in front of Xiao Yang, so she slapped her hand down, and the result was just good enough to hit her elastic ass. Die. However, listening to Xiao Yang's words, Li Bingrui's anger on her pretty face became more and more serious, and her heart was more ashamed and angry. With a move, the long sword of cold ice shot by Xiao Yang returned to her hand in an instant. With the sound of breaking the air, in the blink of an eye, more than a dozen energy skills were shot one after another to take the key points of Xiao Yang's body. There are even several energy contests. Unexpectedly, they shoot at Xiao Yang's crotch intentionally or unintentionally, which makes Xiao Yang's crotch tight, and the body movement of dodging speeds up a bit. When Li Bingrui was ashamed and angry, he directly threw out the long sword in his hand. At the moment when he was close to Xiao Yang's body, it suddenly burst into fragments, and shot at Xiao Yang's body with the potential to break through the air. Naturally, such a dense attack cannot be avoided, but Xiao Yang also stopped it with the rich source gas in his body. However, almost at the same time, Li Bingrui quickly raised his hands, linked his 10 fingers, and the seal between his two jade hands turned rapidly. The source gas in his body kept pouring out of his body and condensed into a cold ice long sword in the void around his body. Xianbing assassination. The jade hand held 2 long ice swords and crossed them on the Sunday. Every long sword he touched burst into pieces in an instant, turned into countless fragments, broke into the air suddenly with a very cold breath, and shot at Xiao Yang's golden body. However, this is not over. Ice Avenue. Dark Ice Fantasy. At the next moment, Li Bingrui shouted again. At the same time, around Xiao Yang, a mirror frozen by cold ice immediately condensed out of thin air, and the power of the road was displayed at the moment. In each mirror, there was the same picture as Li Bingrui at the moment, holding double swords and cold ice debris all over the sky, and the most shocking thing was, when Li Bingrue approached Xiao Yang, the pictures in the mirrors jumped out of the mirror, condensed into essence, and stabbed Xiao Yang away. Between heaven and earth, dozens of Li Bingrue held swords at the same time. Countless ice debris shot at Xiao Yang with a sharp and extremely cold breath. The whole heaven and earth suddenly became cold because of this ice avenue. The air was extremely cold, the ground was frosted, and the sky was covered with snow. Together with Xiao Yang's actions at the moment, and even the rotation speed of the source gas in his body, they were all affected. This woman's icy avenue. It's terrible. Aware of this, Rao was shocked by Xiao Yang's determination, and looked at Li Bingrue's posture at this time, as if he wanted to take people's lives. If he stuck to it, he was afraid it would be really dangerous. Xiao Yang, since you want to see me, first of all, you must defeat my disciples, otherwise, as the girl said, leave here and never come again. At this time, in Xiao Yang's mind, a voice full of grace suddenly sounded. Almost in an instant, Xiao Yang suddenly raised his head, looked up at the surrounding world and saw Li Bingrue closer and closer, but a smile appeared on Xiao Yang's face. So, it's Yi Honglian asking him to do it now. Since the elder said so, the younger generation should be invited by the elder. When the voice fell, Xiao Yang shook his palm out of thin air, and the Xian heavy ruler immediately fell into his hand. At the same time, the light blue flame also rose abruptly. At the moment when the flame was burning, Li Bingrue also fell heavily in the air with a powerful blow. The two long swords in his hands broke through the void. Everywhere he passed was a cold world. Now, looking behind Li Bingrue, even the entrance of the valley was filled with cold ice. Around Xiao Yang's body, countless cold ice debris wrapped with extremely cold sword chi fell rapidly, seeing that the next moment will fall on Xiao Yang. At this moment, Xiao Yang was calm. Since Yi Honglian was allowed to do it, he naturally didn't have to worry about anything. When Xian Chongkai slowly lifted up, Xiao Yang faced the four directions, and his heart moved. The source gas in his body immediately poured into Xian Chongkai crazily, and the hot breath immediately rose to the sky, with a momentum like a rainbow. 7 broken sky ruler. Then, Xiao Yang burst out suddenly. When he turned sharply, he waved 7 feet around him. The terrible flame immediately rose up and broke the void. At the same time, he also broke all the cold ice illusions around him. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Yang's 4 sides were swept away, but... No, what about the woman? Suddenly aware of a certain point, Xiao Yang's face could not help but change for a moment. Although the Kaimang just now was fierce, it only broke the illusions condensed by the cold ice avenue. What about Li Bingrue himself? Die. When Xiao Yang regained his consciousness, a startling cry sounded suddenly overhead. When Xiao Yang looked up, he only saw Li Bingrue holding a long sword and coming over his head. The blade pointed, countless cold ice immediately fell down and hit Xiao Yang's body. While damaging his clothes, it also turned into a thick layer of solid ice. In the blink of an eye, then his whole body was frozen. Ice Soul Chop. Li Bingrue held up the frozen long sword in his hand. While the source gas was pouring in, the world trembled. In the void, countless cold ice condensed out of thin ice. With the cover of a layer of thin ice on the frozen long sword, a giant sky-holding sword was condensed over Xiao Yang's head. In a short time, a terrible smell of unparalleled hegemony spread from the huge sword. The chilly air made people tremble. The terrible pressure firmly locked Xiao Yang directly below. Li Bingrue didn't leave any hands on this blow. He seemed to be decisive in killing. If Xiao Yang couldn't fight back, he would die under this sword. Drink. The next moment, Li Bingrue's cold cry suddenly rang out, his hands clenched the long sword and waved it down. The giant sword in the sky also fell suddenly at the same time, the invisible void was pierced in an instant, the world trembled, and the terrible pressure fell straight to Xiao Yang. But until now, Xiao Yang is still in the ice. How can he escape the attack from the sky? This sword, you will die. Xiao Yang, if you want to blame, you can only blame yourself. Why do you have to come to the fire maple forest? Why do you have to get different? Click. Before the extremely cold words in Li Bingrue's mouth fell, the cold ice that was firmly controlling Xiao Yang's body suddenly made a clear clicking sound. Although the sound was not big, it was very clear in Li Bingrui's ears at the moment. Then, clear cracks spread rapidly on the cold ice. Even if you break the ice, you can't escape with this blow of ice soul cutting. Die. The murderous cry came out again. The giant sword under Li Bingrui's control suddenly fell a little faster. He saw that it was about to land on Xiao Yang. At the moment, the latter looked up with eyes full of flame, and purple and golden family patterns were shining in the center of his eyebrows. At this time, in his hand, there was a palm-sized flame wheel. It is also flying at a high speed. In the middle of the roulette, there is a thumb-sized black spot, deep as void, with an endless sense of illusion and phagocytosis. Most importantly, there seems to contain a special force. Buddha anger. Reincarnation. At the same time, it seemed that the whole world was trembling. When Xiao Yang raised the roulette in his hand and was facing the huge sword above his head, he stretched out a finger and gently touched the black spot in the middle of the roulette, for a moment. Shua. The void above Xiao Yang's head was broken in an instant, and the black strange light column collided with the giant sword in an instant. Li Bingrui was frightened to see that the giant sword he spent most of his strength was gradually decomposed under the strange black light, and the power on it was more and more dispersed until a crack appeared on the giant sword, make a corner of the giant sword crumble, and then Kaka. Cracks spread rapidly until the whole giant sword was covered by the cracks. With a bang, it contained more than half of Li Bingrui's strength, and burst. The remaining strength of the black light column broke through the void and disappeared into the top of the sky. Is that the skill of Big Avenue? The special power contained in the reincarnation of Buddha's anger is Xiao Yang's Void Avenue. Although she didn't notice it, Li Bingrui can see it clearly. With her study of the power of the avenue, she naturally understands that only the strong Yuan Wang can perform the skills of the avenue. Now Xiao Yang has won her by this. Although it's normal, however, she was unwilling to let a strong person who returned to the source understand the skill of the road. Of course, as far as today is concerned, Xiao Yang doesn't know that the Buddha anger reincarnation he created can perfectly fit with the Void Avenue, thus becoming the so-called avenue technique. After breaking the huge sword, Xiao Yang didn't run to the valley immediately, but used different fire to circulate in his body for a week before he started. To be honest, Li Bingrui sealed his body with cold ice before. He couldn't break it simply by relying on different fire. In a hurry, he used the blood force in his body, plus the blessing of giant elephant resolution, and even the dragon phoenix ancient armor. Finally, he broke the cold ice reluctantly by relying on the domineering and dark strength of level 8 collapse. It has to be said that Li Bingrui's cold ice avenue does have its own strength. Whether it is the suppression of different fires or the tenacity of terror, it is much stronger than other strong people with the same attributes at the same level. But this time, in order to find Yi Honglian, Xiao Yang didn't dare to have any carelessness. Just now, he was helpless. He just showed the reincarnation of Buddha's anger. If not, he was afraid that he really couldn't take Li Bingrui's blow, but to his surprise, he didn't expect the effect to be surprisingly good. After returning to his mind, Xiao Yang ignored Li Bingrui. He moved at his feet, and the Tianjue step was displayed in an instant. His body immediately ran towards the valley. Later, Li Bingrui saw it, and her pretty face changed in an instant. She quickly chased Xiao Yang. Regardless of victory or defeat, she would never allow Xiao Yang to contact Yi Honglian, and she would never let the master leave her. Binger, let him in. Just as Li Bingrui was about to start to intercept Xiao Yang, Yi Honglian's voice suddenly came into her ears. Li Bingrui's Jiao body immediately gave a meal, but then she could only stay in place with a sad face. When Xiao Yang crossed the valley and came to the deepest part of the Green Mountain, a slightly familiar scene appeared again. In front of Xiao Yang, there was a precipice, flat and smooth, as if it had been cut out by some sharp weapon. On the four walls, there were flaming red lotus flowers, gathered upward, baptized by the sun, and the hot breath filled the air. Directly below the precipice, there was a bottomless pool with clear water, pebbles at the bottom, and lotus floating on it. Although it is elegant, there is no fish in it. When the water is clear, there is no fish. Suddenly, a sentence came out of his mouth. Xiao Yang took his eyebrows, and then looked up to the high place. From the front of him, stone platforms were suspended in the air, on which red lotus bloomed to the top of the mountain. Although he didn't look carefully, Xiao Yang also understood that this stone platform should be just 100. With the experience of Guyo and Haimo dust twice, Xiao Yang immediately guessed the meaning of Yi Honglian, or had expected it long ago. Although Li Bingrui has passed, this 100-step stone platform is the real test for him. Unless he can cross this 100-step stone platform, he will never want to see Yi Honglian. The red lotus stone platform is specially prepared for you by the master. Even if you can pass my level, you can't go up the mountain. One side, Li Bingrui came forward with a cold face. Meimo ruthlessly cut the evil man in front of her eyes, but she still snorted coldly without any other action. Now that Yi Honglian has opened her mouth, she will not attack Xiao Yang again, but even so, there will still be a fire at the bottom of her heart when she remembers that this guy was unexpectedly. Before the pool, Xiao Yang ignored Li Bingrui on one side, but slowly closed his eyes and immediately took a long breath. At the moment when his eyes suddenly opened, a light blue light flashed through the dark pupils, and the source gas in his body was suddenly raised at this moment. Giant elephant. With a violent drink from the bottom of his heart, Xiao Yang stepped heavily on the ground, and his body suddenly burst out. In the blink of an eye, he came to the first stone platform. When the soles of his feet fell, the turbulent power erupted again. Bang! 1 foot fell, and the floating stone platform suddenly sank uncontrollably. Then, Xiao Yang's body jumped up again and ran to the next stone platform. Later, Li Bingrui looked at it coldly. Although Xiao Yang's action at the moment seemed not slow, it was just the beginning. The more he went up, the more difficulties he would face. Over the stone platform, Xiao Yang stepped on the red lotus and kept attacking. With each step, the red lotus would burst instantly and turn into a raging fire. When he flew, the flames stuck to his legs and feet like brown sugar. With the swing of his body, Xiao Yang quickly climbed and spread. When Xiao Yang ran up half of the stone steps, his whole golden body, he had been wrapped by the fire. Under it, Xiao Yang was sweating profusely, but his face became dignified. His golden body, under the burning of the flame, dissipated at a speed visible to the naked eye. The golden light on it became weaker and weaker, and even some places were broken. The flame came straight to his body, so that Xiao Yang had to use more of his own strength to solidify his golden body. What the giant elephant decision itself needs is physical strength. Therefore, the consumption of the golden body represents the accelerated passage of Xiao Yang's own strength. I'm afraid these flames will make him lose all his strength and fall on the stone platform before he climbs to the top floor. Although your physical strength is strong, you are nothing in front of the fire of Honglian industry. On one side, Li Bingrui unconsciously jumped up and followed, his feet stood in the void, his 2 snow-white arms were in front of his chest, blocking a large area of snow-white softland, and looked at Xiao Yang, who was obviously struggling in front of him, waiting for his failure. The fire of Honglian industry has a terrible flame that burns and devours the flesh. No matter what kind of powerful body it is like thin paper in front of the fire of Honglian industry. Once it is stained with it, it can turn it into nothingness in a moment. Of course, the fire of the red lotus industry is also called the fire of nirvana. Once it is refined, the person who gets it can become holy in the flesh. Everything can't be destroyed and all enemies can't be stopped. However, now, Xiao Yang can't even climb this stone platform. How can we say refining the fire of the red lotus industry? Drink. With his teeth clenched, Xiao Yang whispered and his mind moved. The dragon phoenix ancient armor suddenly appeared on the body surface. Different fire surged up and condensed into different fire armor outside the body. Then his body suddenly shot out and went straight to the top of the mountain. On the cliff, Xiao Yang's body was swept violently, and his body was wrapped by red flame. His gold body was broken, and the different fire armor quickly became weak under the erosion of the red lotus fire. Until now, Xiao Yang could only climb the stone platform on the 70th floor. Hiss! The different fire armor was broken, and then it was Xiao Yang's turn to take pride in the Dragon Phoenix ancient armor. Longhuang ancient armor has always been called invincible by water and fire. At the beginning, there were many sect leaders Xiao Yang to resist the damage of foreign enemies, but now, in front of Hongliani fire, it is still too inferior. When Xiao Yang set foot on the 80th floor of the stone platform, he had lost all his strength. The Dragon Phoenix ancient armor was still struggling to support, but Xiao Yang could only fall on the stone platform and let the fire burn. He gritted his teeth and insisted. When the Dragon Phoenix ancient armor was broken, Xiao Yang's flesh and blood were burned by the fire, scorching and shrinking rapidly in a few minutes. Xiao Yang's hands had been burned to expose the dense white bones under them, and even the bones had begun to turn into ashes. Xiao Yang, who was beyond recognition, roared with unidentified pain in his mouth. The blood and flesh in his chest had dissipated rapidly under the burning of different fire. The whole body was convulsing violently involuntarily. Only the light blue flame still rose in the pair of eyes. Click. Until a moment, an inexplicable sound of rupture sounded in Xiao Yang's cyclone, and Xiao Yang's body suddenly stagnated. Then, this body like a skeleton suddenly tilted up his head, opened his mouth, and a long roar all over the sky burst out, and a terrible suction rushed up from his mouth. The burning fire was forced into Xiao Yang's body along his body. Under the fierce combustion of his own different fire, he forced it into surging energy and poured it into the cyclone. At this moment, Xiao Yang's whole breath also quickly rose. In a twinkling of an eye, he had stepped into the level of the later stage of returning to the source, together with the body just burned by the fire. At this moment, they all returned to their original appearance. Who? Slowly exhale, Xiao Yang raised his head and looked at the remaining stone platform above his head. A violent color flashed in his eyes. Then, his body jumped suddenly, and his body shot up again and went straight to the top of the mountain. In situ, where Xiao Yang's feet fell, the stone platform was torn apart. This video will end here.